TalkTV now, a teacher was stabbed in the neck while another teacher and teenage girl were also injured in a playground at a school in Ammanford in South West Wales yesterday. A teenage girl has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. Well, joining me now to discuss this and other crime stories, Peter Blexley, former Scotland Yard and Met Police detective. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Still in the studio, obviously, Philip Ingram as well. It's a horrific story, this, absolutely terrifying. I mean, I think lots of parents have got used to seeing the horrible stories about shootings in American schools. Thankfully, we don't have the same access to guns in this country, and we don't see that, obviously, post-Dunblane. But obviously, can you imagine the absolute terror of the children, the teachers, and, of course, the parents upon hearing about this?
Yes, and imagine the horror that must have gone through those parents' minds.
Oh.
As they hear of the incident, they rush to the school. Is this my child or not?
Yeah.
Truly horrific. I think what it might do is spark the conversation once again that we've had, particularly around inner city schools, where they talk about knife arches. In other words, those metal detectors that we have in the past seen children paraded through as they go into school.
I've always thought that's a bit of a giveaway that I don't want to send my kid to that school.
Indeed. And, of course, what happens, and this is a fact, many children in secondary schools actually hide their knives in bushes and undergrowth and other areas near to the school. And behind it, go into school. And then when they come out of school, they retrieve the knife because they feel that's what's going to keep them safe. But that's it.
We know that a lot. I mean, we don't know the circumstances of this, and obviously, as being an arrest, so obviously it's sub judice. We've got to give it. But talking more generally about violence in schools, again, we're not talking about sort of central, big inner city school here. We do just see, it does seem to me, maybe again, am I just imagining this, or are we just seeing it more in the media? We're seeing more sort of violence from youngsters. Again, the urge to carry a weapon. In your day or my day at school, there might be a punch-up between the lads, there might have been a bit of name-calling by the girls and maybe a bit of slapsy, maybe, if it went all horribly wrong. But people didn't have weapons. People didn't get stabbed. They didn't end up in hospital. It seems that it sort of got out of control.
It is out of control, and you are not imagining it. Reliable statistics show that teenagers are getting stabbed at twice the rate that they were 10 years ago. Now, that needs to ring alarm bells with everybody concerned with the criminal justice system, the education system, the voluntary sector, you name it, because something is so hugely wrong that children, when they leave homes, they're going, OK, keys, phone, maybe cash, knife.
Yeah, they don't do cash anymore. But that's the thing. But we know also that a lot of the youngsters who do carry knives, that they carry them, they believe for their own safety. They feel that they are under threat walking through their local streets from other people, from gangs, and that they have to have a weapon to protect themselves. And they've got this awful thing. And you see this among girls and boys, this sort of respect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough they don't pronounce the word properly, let alone they think this is an actual thing. Yeah, you've got to give me respect. And it's like, well, I'll give you respect if you don't carry a knife and you're not acting like you're feral on the bus. But we are just seeing this idea that if someone can write something on social media or something, and then that somehow, to show that you need respect, you have to stab somebody. Now, not in any way saying these are the circumstances of what's happened in this school, because it was a teacher that was targeted. But we are just seeing this idea that for some youngsters, not all, of course it's not, that for some youngsters, the solution to any issue is violence.
And once again, reliable statistics show that a teenager who takes a knife out onto the streets of Britain is twice as likely to be stabbed than one who doesn't. It's a folly.
Although, is that because the knife puts them at risk, or is it actually the kids who carry knives are the ones who were at risk already?
Sometimes
that's why they're carrying the knives.
Sometimes because they get themselves into an armed confrontation, and sometimes because the knives are simply taken from them and they become victims of their own weaponry.
Yeah, exactly. It's unbelievably sad. Philip Ingram, I mean, look, this whole story, we've got kids. I mean, the thought of getting a call from you, it's bad enough. I genuinely, to this day, if I get a call from a daughter's school, your immediate thought is, oh, my God, what's happened? Are they ill, or they're, because why are you bothering me otherwise? I don't bother you, don't bother me. That's kind of the deal. But that word would have gone round this town, that something's happened at the school. And we know the kids were put in lockdown.
Code red.
Code red lockdown. You say, for hours on end. And, the parents of those who injured were informed. But, this is I mean, you can't imagine what is going through parents' minds, but especially after seeing what we have seen in American schools. And certainly, look, just before I went off air yesterday, and we didn't have enough information for me to say anything on air, we got information that there was an incident at a school, number of ambulances and police there, but we didn't know what it was. And you are thinking, oh my God, how bad could this be?
But I think there's more fundamental pieces in here. We're seeing a normalisation of violence in society, and this almost acceptance that violence is part of what's going on in everyday life. And we're seeing much less respect for authority.
Whether it's parents,
teachers, police, and all the rest of it. And whenever you bring discipline out of society and you bring that respect out of society, and you've got children that are feral in a lot of cases within communities, then this sort of violence grows and grows and grows.
Yeah.
And for us to accept it then and think that, oh, well, it's only a little bit of it. It's only the kids.
They'll grow out of it.
They'll grow out of it. No.
I'm particularly interested by the word normalisation. I think this applies to all crime.
Yeah.
Let me just rewind a few years. When I was a police officer, a uniformed police officer, and we had neighbourhood beat bobbies, they would come in to do their shift at the start of the morning.
I can't remember the last time I saw a beat officer.
And they would look at the crime book of the crimes reported overnight. And if there was a burglary on their beat, they would be incandescent with rage. They would regard it as a failure of themselves.
One of my people I'm here to protect.
Absolutely. And they would go out there with all determination to try and solve it.
Now it feels like it's just a box-ticking exercise. Look, well, this ties in with the new crime stats we've had out just a couple of hours ago now. And we've talked a lot on the show about shoplifting. Shoplifting offences recorded by police in England and Wales have risen to the highest level since 2003. A total of 430,104 offences were recorded in the year to December 2023. That's up 37% from the year beforehand. Now, given it's the highest figure ever, given that retail representatives, they've said, look, basically, shopkeepers aren't even bothering to report shoplifting anymore. They reckon only a third of shoplifting cases are reported now. We are in an epidemic. Now, certainly, I was just mentioning on air and talking with Philip, my local high street, it's all the shopkeepers talking about. I've lived there for a long time, so we talk about it. They literally stand and lock their doors because of the shoplifting that comes in. They tell me that when the police do turn up, if they do, they give them. We know this guy. They even have people follow people home. They know where they live. They've got their names. They've got their addresses. They've got a photograph of them. They've got CCTV footage of them committing the crime, and the police do nothing. These people are never charged. If they are, they're not actually facing anything other than a slap on the wrist. We are not seeing people going to prison for repeat offences. We have basically, whatever the government says in recent announcements, we have legalised stealing from shops, have we not?
The streets have been surrendered because the police do not patrol them anymore. They are too busy going from one call to another, to another, to another.
You can't say, excuse me, officer, I just saw this down the road.
And the likelihood of somebody coming out of a shop, having committed a crime and running into a police officer is absolutely non-existent.
But they don't even need to do that. I thought that's the whole point of everyone having CCTV. Here is an objective proof that this person picked this up and walked out of the shop without paying it. And this is the name of this bloke, and here's a picture of him. And the police don't... How are you not taking that person into custody and charging them?
Only if they've got, number one, the resources, number two, the resolve and determination.
What resources do you need to do that?
Not a lot, but of course they will tell you they've been stripped to the bone, although that argument now is 15 years old and wearing very thin.
They're not going to burglaries, a lot of violent crimes. I mean, people I know, they've had their bike or their mobile phone stolen, street mugging, terrified, people, armed. Someone in a balaclava coming up to you next to a moped with a knife. That is a terrifying, life-changing incident for most people. Those aren't investigated a lot of the time.
So my community had a meeting with the local police the other night. And one of my neighbours said to the sergeant, how come you're never anywhere when we need you?
Yep.
To which the sergeant abruptly replied, we go where we're instructed. Well, who's doing the instructing?
We know a lot of bobbies on the beat feel strongly about this. Can I ask you also, I mean, we know also, Robert, this latest stats, other violent crimes are also up as well. It's not just theft. So, if they're not dealing with theft, they're dealing with violent crime. Well, no, you ain't dealing with that either. Sadiq Khan, on the shoplifting side of things, Mayor of London, he said that he hates seeing tags, the security tags on baby products. Often they're locked away now in glass cases in response to people stealing them. He said this upsets him and said if he saw someone stealing those items, he would pay on their behalf. He said this in an interview with the Big Issue magazine. What do you make of that?
Well, there is much that Mr. Khan does that upsets many, many others, let alone him being upset. I wonder what his attitude would be if he went to one of the higher-end streets in London where people are stealing handbags worth thousands and thousands of pounds with impunity, without getting caught. I wonder if he'd be so keen to be charitable and stand there and pay for those kind of things. I quite frankly...
No, but that was different, isn't it? Because he's saying if people are stealing those things, they're stealing necessities, like nappies, or if they're stealing food, it's a necessity. It's not something that, you know, is a luxury item. Would you have more sympathy for those people?
Sadiq Khan is the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, the Metropolitan Police. These stats happened on his watch. It's his responsibility. I'm not quite frankly interested in his bit of PR and spin that he gives to the big issue. Crisis applies to the Metropolitan Police, the streets that have been surrendered, and the overall crime and justice picture. He has a lot more to do than to stand around hoping to pay for some nappies.
Right, now, because the London mayoral election is taking place next Thursday on the 2nd of May, we've mentioned the name of one of the candidates, Sadiq Khan, is standing again. I have to read out the full list of candidates. I'm going to do this as quick as I can. Do try and keep up. The full list of candidates standing in the election in London next Thursday are Femi Amin, the Animal Welfare Party, Count Binface for Mayor of London, Rob Blackie, Liberal Democrat, Natalie Campbell, Independent, Howard Cox, Reform UK, Amy Gallagher, Social Democratic Party, Zoe Garbett, the Green Party, Taryn Gulati, Independent, Susan Hall, Conservative Party, Sadiq Khan, Labour Party, Andreas Christofi, Independent, Brian Rose, London Real Party, Nick Scanlon, Britain First. And breathe. Anyway, those are all the candidates. Legally, we have to do that for Ofcom reasons. I'm not commenting, but there we are. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you in the studio talking so much sense. You ever think of running for election, Peter?
I would love to be the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, but of course it's part of the mayoral job,
mayoral thing, so
which I would not be remotely
We didn't see you on the list.
or
No,
suitable for. But
I would totally vote for you.
Well, you're very kind.
I think most of our audience would as well. Anyway,
I would like to see that role stripped away from the mayor.
Yes, I think you're
Then
right.
I'd have a
Separate
pop
those
at
two
it.
roles. Indeed, indeed. The person in charge of the police shouldn't be the... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That role. Police and Crime Commissioner is kind of supposed to represent the ordinary people.
Hold
isn't
the
it?
police to account.
Yeah, indeed. Right then. Well, thank you very much indeed, gents.